What events led to the creation of the American Empire? Today, many American citizens deny that an American empire exists or has ever existed. Despite a long anti-imperial tradition, America's post-war or Civil War economic expansion gave it the opportunity to prove itself capable of facing its long-time European competitions. Number 1. The end of the Civil War and the closing of the frontier left young Americans with a desire to prove themselves. Number 2. The Spanish-American War gave us the opportunity to prove ourselves in a war against an old colonial overlord. Number 3. Internal debate over an American empire. Number 1. The end of the Civil War and the closing of the frontier left young Americans with a desire to prove themselves. Theodore Roosevelt said to live adventurously, quote, "I wish to preach not the doctrine of ignoble ease, but the doctrine of the strenuous life, the life of toil and effort, of strife and of labor and strife." End quote. He said that people should hunt, and one example of him hunting was he killed a mama bear but then refused to kill the baby. This is where we get a teddy bear from. Another is horseback riding. And the last is football. Football was a way that young men could prove themselves because there was no way to do it after the war or the closing of the frontier. They used football to prove their manliness. The old versions were very violent, and some even died during it. Number 2. The Spanish-American War gave us the opportunity to prove ourselves in a war against an old colonial overlord. Cuba wanted to rebel against Spain, and many Americans supported it, such as William Randolph Hearst, who owned a newspaper and publication company. He wanted a war to get more money from selling newspapers and books about it. He said, "You furnish the pictures, and I will furnish the war." To help start this war, America blamed the explosion of the ship the Maine on the Spanish. After this, Theodore Roosevelt sent a secret note to the American Navy in Hong Kong to attack the Spanish Navy in the Philippines before they knew what was happening. In Manila, in the Philippines, the Spanish did not want to surrender to the Philippines, so they made a deal with the Americans. But part of this deal was that the Spanish would have to lose a fake war, so people fake shot at each other. Another example is in Guam. The Americans fired cannonballs over them as a warning, but some of the people in Guam made them a meal because they could not shoot back, because they thought the cannonballs were a welcome gift and they had no cannonballs. So after that, a man came to their ships, invited them, and the Americans captured him and then the rest. Number 3, there was an internal debate over an American empire. President McKinley didn't know what to do with the Philippines. He said, "I didn't want the Philippines, and when they came to us as a gift from the gods, I didn't know what to do with them." So he prayed about it and then made a list of the pros and cons. There were 4 main things on this list. Number 1, if they gave it to Spain, it would look like it would make America look cowardly. Number 2, they couldn't give it to France or Germany because they were trade enemies. Number 3, couldn't leave the Philippines to themselves because they had always been ruled by someone else. And number 4, he decided he could make them a colony, civilize them, and make them Christians. The United States had a decided government. It got the power over the people because the people willingly gave it to them. America is an anti-empire empire. We are here to help countries escape empires. Today, many American citizens deny that an American empire exists or has ever existed. Despite a long anti-imperial tradition, America's post-Civil War economic expansion gave it the opportunity to prove itself capable of facing its long-time European competitions. Number 1, the end of the Civil War and the closing of the frontier left young Americans with a desire to prove themselves. Number 2, the Spanish-American War gave us the opportunity to prove ourselves in a war against an old colonial overlord. Number 3, the internal debate over an American empire.